The world's oceans are so underexplored that if you dive deeper than 3,500 meters, there's a good chance you'll discover a new species unknown to science. There's also a good chance you'll find debris and garbage. Oceans cover more than 70% of the Earth's surface. The average depth of the oceans is about 3.7 kilometers, and since light can only penetrate to a depth of around 100 meters, darkness reigns deep underwater. Let's take this a step further and conclude that since most of the planet is covered by water, it means that most of the Earth exists in total darkness. Water in the oceans accounts for almost 96% of the Earth's total water. The portion of fresh water compared to seawater is so small that if all the fresh water flowing into the ocean were spread across its surface, it would form a layer only about 1.25 meters thick. 94% of all life on Earth lives in water. This means that all of us who live on land belong to a very, very small minority. So, what mysteries lurk in the depths of the oceans? The deeper we go, the more curious it gets. In fact, it seems we know more about the surface of Mars than we do about the ocean floor of our own planet. What's happening in the deepest places? Until recently, we didn't know much at all. The lack of light and extreme pressure make this part of the ocean incredibly difficult to explore. Today we're setting out on a journey into the very depths. We're going to find out what the bottom of the ocean looks like, what it's made of, and what goes on down there. Who knows what we might find? We're going to dive deep into places with the most alien conditions imaginable, so our virtual submersible sets off. We'll make short stops at significant depths until we reach the bottom. 40 meters. This is the maximum depth for pearl divers who dive without any scuba equipment. They rely solely on holding their breath. Below that depth, the increasing water pressure forces air to escape from the lungs. And that's why it is the maximum depth for recreational divers. 200 meters, 90% of all aquatic life exists within this layer of the world's oceans. At this depth, light still manages to penetrate the water, creating conditions for phytoplankton to grow. This vast biomass feeds small crustaceans, which in turn become food for fish and large marine mammals like whales. As we dive deeper, there is less light and less life. We enter what is known as the twilight zone. 332 meters, this is the record depth for a scuba dive using standard diving equipment. No one has been able to dive deeper without the help of a bathyscaphe. 565 meters. This is the maximum recorded diving depth of the emperor penguin. Photosynthesis is almost non-existent here due to the lack of light. Therefore, there is no vegetation. However, we can still find a relatively large number of fish. For most of them, though, this is no longer a friendly environment. They do not live here for comfort. They go deeper in an attempt to hide from predators. 1,000 meters. This marks the end of the twilight zone. Less than 1% of sunlight reaches this depth. But the creatures that live here have learned to emit their own light. Through bioluminescent chemical reactions, they can attract prey or ward off predators. Up to this depth, siphonophores, close relatives of jellyfish, can be found. They live in colonies clustered around a long, tube-like structure that serves as their common digestive system. As we go deeper, life forms become even more bizarre and alien. 1,027 meters. This is the record depth reached by a military submarine. As we continue the descent, we enter the midnight zone where total darkness dominates. Food is extremely scarce here and marine life is forced to conserve energy. Most animals do not hunt actively, but instead drift, collecting marine snow, microparticles of dead fish, remains, plant matter, feces, dust and sand. 6,100 meters. It is the depth at which transcontinental internet cables are laid on the ocean floor. More than 90% of the ocean is about 6,000 meters deep, which is considered the conventional bottom of the ocean. However, there are many places where the ocean sinks below its own floor much deeper. The Challenger Abyss is the most famous of these. It is located in the southwestern part of the trench, 340 kilometers from the island of Guam. According to various data, its maximum depth ranges from 10,028 meters to 11,034 meters below sea level. The second deepest place in the ocean is also in the Mariana Trench, the Serena Abyss, located 200 kilometers east of the Challenger Abyss. Its maximum depth is slightly less, at 10,809 meters. Interestingly, the deepest place in the ocean is not the closest to the center of the Earth. Therefore, the Arctic Ocean seafloor is closer to the center of the Earth than the bottom of the Challenger Abyss, which shoot out highly mineralized water under a pressure of hundreds of atmospheres, with a temperature of up to 450 degrees Celsius. According to a hypothesis, 1 billion years ago, the black smokers became the cradle of life in the ocean. As for the existence of life in the Mariana Trench, two Americans, Jacques Piccard and Don Walsh, were the first people to visit the Challenger Abyss in 1960. They descended to 10,918 meters in 5 hours on the deep diving research bathyscaphe Trieste. At this mark, the explorers spent 20 minutes and saw almost nothing due to the clouds of silt raised by the apparatus. However, they spotted a flatfish in the beam of the searchlight. This was a scientific sensation. They had found signs of life at such a depth. However, merely spotting a fish was inconclusive, and the scientific community braced itself for years of waiting for the next expeditions. The wait lasted until March 24, 1995. On that day, a Japanese probe, Kaiko, was lowered to the maximum depth of the depression and recorded a depth of 10,911.4 meters. It also brought back samples of silt, where scientists discovered microscopic living creatures, foraminifera, single-celled organisms with mineral skeletons. In July 2011, another research expedition used special models and drop cams equipped with digital video cameras and powerful flashlights to explore the deepest places of the ocean. The most impressive find was a gigantic foraminifera. It was huge for a single-celled organism, measuring over 10 centimeters in size. The next expedition took place in 2012, led by Hollywood filmmaker James Cameron, who used the one-person human-occupied vehicle Deep Sea Challenger. Later, scientists discovered about 200 species of invertebrates in the soil samples brought back. Finally, in December 2014, another expedition reached a depth of 8,145 meters and found complex multicellular organisms. Scientists discovered previously unknown fish which resembled snailfish. This fish is considered the record holder for deep water fish, as there are no other fish at this depth except for snailfish. The good news is that this species has no natural enemies at such depths. Now, let's go almost to the opposite side of the globe to explore another interesting oceanic depression, the Puerto Rican Trench. It is located on the boundary between the Caribbean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean, atop a geological pit. It is the deepest depression in the Atlantic, with its lowest point at 8,376 meters. This point is called the Milwaukee Depth, in honor of the US Navy ship Milwaukee, which first discovered it. This notorious geographical discovery was made on February 14, 1939. But the exact depth wasn't measured until 2018 using state-of-the-art equipment, the Kongsberg EM-124 multibeam sonar. Later, a retired US Navy officer turned private equity investor, Victor Vescovo, completed the first manned dive to the Puerto Rico Trench, the deepest point in the Atlantic Ocean, on December 19, 2018. Like many other deep places in the ocean, the Puerto Rican Trench is a very turbulent location. Geologically, seismic activity has already had catastrophic consequences for the neighboring islands, especially Puerto Rico. On October 11, 1918, a 7-point earthquake triggered a tsunami wave that struck the west coast of the island. More than 100 people were killed, and the damage amounted to tens of millions of dollars. Some geoscientists believe there is a possibility of a powerful volcanic eruption in the near future, which could cause a disaster. There is a geological anomaly associated with the Puerto Rican Trench. According to NASA, there is a super-dense geological formation under the trench. It is so dense that it has an increased gravitational impact on the ocean surface, causing it to subside slightly. This explains the negative impact on the accuracy of navigation devices. The fauna of the trench is fascinating. In 2012, a robotic bathyscaphe descended to the bottom of the trench and photographed a swarm of amphipods, small crustaceans. These creatures were caught and brought to the surface for analysis. During the same expedition, video footage recorded invertebrate creatures that in no way should have been found at such depths. Later, Dr. Stace Beaulieu of the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution identified one of the creatures by its soft, dark carcass, which was 10 to 20 centimeters long. It turned out to be a sea cucumber from the genus Pygonodon. He also identified a representative of the crustacean family Monopsidae in another creature. The fact that these species existed at such extreme depths forced scientists to make serious adjustments to their theories about the survival of species. Now let's look into the Kermadec Trench in the Pacific Ocean. It is as gigantic a deep-water trough in the Pacific as the Mariana Trench is in the Atlantic. Located at the eastern foot of the Kermadec Islands, it connects to the Tonga Trench in the north. Its length is about 1,200 kilometers. The trench was discovered in 1889 by an expedition of the British ship Penguin. Its depth is also slightly less than the Mariana Trench at 10,047 meters. The trench is interesting because of its specific animal species discovered by research expeditions. For example, in 2012, the amphipods Alicella gigantea were found at the bottom of the trench. Their size puzzled and confounded scientists, as they were up to 34 centimeters long, while most crustaceans found elsewhere are much smaller, about 2 centimeters long. The gigantic size is a paradox resulting from the extreme living conditions at great depths. Deep-sea fish from the Lipperidae family were also found in the trench. More precisely, a special biological species known as Laparis kermadicensis was discovered. It is the second deepest fish, with a very narrow range of depths, from 6,472 to 7,561 meters. The discovery of the pearl fish in the Kermadec Trench caused a sensation. It was found at a depth of 8,200 to 8,300 meters. This was an unusual find because pearl fish typically live much closer to the surface at depths of 1,800 to 2,000 meters. How these creatures managed to reach such extreme depths and survive remains to be explained. Our story covered only a few pages of the ongoing exploration of the deepest ocean places. As technological capabilities continue to develop, more and more dives are taking place. In 2020, as many as 6 manned expeditions took place to the Mariana Trench, so we can hope and wait for more amazing discoveries.